Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation on mental health in the LGBTQ plus community. My name is Josh Meredith, and I am the executive assistant here at Born This Way Foundation. And I am so honored to host this conversation with you all during a month when many of us are celebrating Pride. However, before we begin, I must first acknowledge that we would not be able to celebrate Pride as we do today if it had not been for our Black and Brown, trans and queer elders fighting for our rights. And I, as a white cis man, pledge to work constantly to understand my privilege and platform, a platform on which I'll use today to say that Black lives matter. I will show up with my Black siblings in protest because we can't be free until we all are free. But I'll be the first to admit that I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning how to talk about mental health. I'm still learning how to be a better ally. I'm still learning how to celebrate my own pride. So that's why I'm so excited to speak with all of you today. You all bring such a unique perspective to this conversation, and I, along with our audience, I'm so excited to learn from you. So a little bit about me before I introduce the rest of our amazing panelists. I'm Josh. My pronouns are he, him, his, and mental health in the LGBTQ plus youth community is the cause that brought me to work for Born This Way Foundation. Growing up as a queer youth in Appalachia, we didn't talk about mental health. Mental health was rarely discussed. And I felt like I didn't have the resources or the community that I needed to thrive. I suffered from severe anxiety and depression and didn't know how to name those feelings. And as I'm sure many of you can relate, coming to terms with my queerness without those resources and learning to celebrate my pride was an isolating journey. So that's why I'm proud to be doing this work with Born This Way Foundation today, connecting young people to the resources that they need. So since we're discussing mental health, we want to be mindful of sensitivities. So if you or a friend are struggling with mental wellness, please visit bornthisway.foundation to find resources to support your mental wellness. So now I'm so excited to turn it over to our truly amazing panelists. So could you each please briefly introduce yourself, your preferred pronouns, and share a little bit about what mental health in the LGBTQ plus community means to you? And we'll start it off with Dr. Rachel O'Neill.
Thank you so much, Josh. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Rachel O'Neill, and I'm a therapist working with Talkspace, which is a digital mental health company. I have been in practice for 17 years, and I'm sorry, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I get so excited to talk about this. I've been in practice for a very long time, and I feel so passionately about working with individuals in the LGBTQ plus community. My very first client was a transgender girl, and from that moment, I felt a calling and a connection to providing space, providing visibility, providing support in whatever way that I could with individuals who needed that in that moment. Mental health for me means supporting individuals' identity, supporting their journey, supporting their process, and sometimes being the only place that they have in that moment to be themselves. It is a responsibility, it is a privilege, it is a gift to work with individuals in this community and to help them find ways to care for their mental health no matter what's going on in their life. And I'm so happy to be here.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel. I'll kick it down to you, Skye.
Thank you so much. My name is Skye. Adrian, I use he and his pronouns. And I do quite a number of things. Right now, I'm the Political and Civic Engagement Coordinator at Fierce NYC. And for those who don't know, Fierce NYC is a nonprofit organization that's based in the Bronx. We work specifically with LGBTQ identified youth of color between the ages of 16 to 25, and basically develop political consciousness and what that looks like for young Black leaders. I also do, so I have a studio, it's called Skye Adrian Studio. And basically what that is something that I started in 2020, contrastingly to everything that was happening. But I just kind of felt that I needed to create a space where other creatives like myself would still be able to record and document this time and like, you know, what are artists doing in this moment, to be able to communicate to the future, like what was happening in this moment. So that's why that project is like super important to me right now. But mental health is literally what's getting me through the day. I feel like prior to this call, like there were so many things that were happening. Had I not got like a moment to breathe, you know, prior, I don't know how easy this conversation would be to speak, especially with everything that we cannot unsee that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So I do think mental health is super important, especially in this time, especially when we're talking about accessibility, because I think mental health is here and the resources are there, but the accessibility is, it's not as accessible. And, you know, as we mentioned, like being able to go online to get mental health services, if it is that I don't even have Wi-Fi, what does that look like for a person like that experience? So I cannot wait to get into this conversation.
Thank you so much, Skye. Now I'll turn it over to Alex Roque.
Hi, thank you. My name is Alex Roque. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the executive director of the Ali Forney Center. The Ali Forney Center is the nation's largest and most comprehensive organization housing and caring for homeless LGBTQ young people. And largely our services are based on mental health services, mental health care, and empowering young people to embrace mental health and to address pathways to recovery and to healing.
Amazing. Thank you, Alex. Atticus, hi.
Hello, I'm Atticus Sandlin. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Youth Advisory President for Youth First at the Resource Center. We are a program that provides social interaction and support groups and different things for queer youth. And I'm here because I have, witnessed countless queer youth come out and experience just being a part of the LGBTQ community, and mental health is very prevalent in our community. And I think it's super important that we open up the conversation and that we really talk about how it affects queer youth specifically.
Thank you, Atticus. And last but not least, the lovely Junior Mintt.
Hello. I'm Junior Mintt. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am a drag artist and an activist in Brooklyn, New York. And with my life experience, as well as my experience as a Black trans person, mental health for me is something that truly has allowed me to not only understand myself, but love myself. And by being Black and by being trans in this world that we live in, it is so necessary. It is so necessary to have mental health resources, because disproportionately Black trans people are affected by homelessness, by undiagnosed mental health disorders, but as well, we have diagnosed mental health disorders, but no health care to help us actually deal with any of these issues that are going on in our lives. And so for us, as Black trans people, but as well as queer people, as allies, as everyone under the umbrella, we have a job to do to provide resources to help with mental health for the entirety of the community, because systemic oppression does drain you mentally, and it as well is consistently pushed to the back burner when it comes to actual resources that are provided. When people think of healthcare, mental health is not necessarily what they think of, and it should be. It is something that is very necessary.
That's exactly right. Our co-founder and president, Cynthia Germanotta, always says, there is no health without mental health. And I love that so much. I echo that sentiment. So thank you, Junior, you're exactly right. So let's kick off this conversation. I'd love to start with Atticus. Atticus, you have done so much at such a young age. Your journey is so inspiring. So I'd love to turn it over to you. We're talking about mental health in the LGBTQ plus community. And we can't talk about that without talking about the importance of a strong community relationship. So I'd love to hear a little bit about more how you came to volunteer at the Resource Center and sort of about your journey.
Yeah. So about 4 years ago, I attended the Youth First Pride Ball prom, which is a prom that we host for queer youth. And it's awesome. I went that 2 years in a row before I really got involved. And then for about 2 years now, I've been going pretty much 3 times a week to Youth First, which has been awesome. I got onto the Youth First Council a while ago, and I was elected president. And in the council, we basically just decide, what programs we want and how we want things to run in Youth First. And through that, I have gotten so many amazing opportunities. I have been involved in so many amazing things and have been able to represent Youth First and the Resource Center. But Youth First is so important to me because of the connection that the queer youth have. Queer culture is a beautiful and intricate thing, and to experience that so close at hand and with so many youth has been an amazing experience. It's really, really important for queer youth to not feel so alone in this process, because through coming out and just experiencing life as a queer person, it can feel very lonely, and it's super important to me that no one feels that alone, because I felt that alone, and I know countless other people who have, and I don't want that for anyone. A lot of people come to Youth First because, their family might not be supportive, or friends or something. So we as Youth First consider ourselves a family. We are each other's chosen family, and we are so incredibly close, and it's an amazing experience. Through Youth First, I've gotten to do some amazing things. I teach and advocate for comprehensive sex education. I've taught a sex ed class at Youth First and another one specifically for queer youth, because our bodies are different, and our relationships, whether sexually or romantically or even platonically, just look different. And so I think it's super important that youth understand what they're doing really and how to interact with each other. And I also have taught safe binding classes and self-massage, because, if you're in pain physically all the time, it's going to affect your mental health. And being able to bind and just really affirm yourself gender-wise is so important. And a lot of youth either don't have the resources to do that, or do it incorrectly and end up getting hurt. So I think it's super important that we teach youth how to do things like that correctly. But yeah, I've been involved for 3 years now, and it's been an amazing experience.
That's amazing. That is so inspiring. Thank you for all the work that you do, all the advocacy that you do. You're providing so many resources to your peers and young people in your community. And wow, I'm just so impressed. So thank you. So you mentioned the importance of this chosen family. Queer youth need queer friends. It's so important. But we also do need safe spaces in which to find ourselves. So I'd love to turn it down to Alex. What does a safe space look like to you, and how can community leaders help to build them?
Safe space has so many definitions for so many different people, and especially as we're facing a pandemic and we're facing a time where we're asked to stay home, home doesn't necessarily always equal safe or equal right. Particularly for LGBTQ young people, what we have found, and a big research paper that we're putting out in the next year, is that safety is affirmation is the most clear and direct and important approach that a young person needs in their upbringing, in their identity, in feeling safe. We have actually found through some research that we started that young people who are stably housed but are not affirmed feel less safe, have higher incidences of depression, higher incidences of anxiety, and higher incidences of suicidal ideation than those young people who are unstably housed but are affirmed in their identity, in their gender, in their queerness, in their LGB, in their spectrum, in the rainbow. So for us, a safe space is a space that embraces a young person as they are, who they love, and empowers them to embrace that for themselves. And as we talk about policy and changes and what our community needs to do to change to become safer, really it starts with a very simple acknowledgement of the rainbow, a simple acknowledgement of the LGBTQ spectrum, of who we are as people, and particularly who our young people are, and how important that affirmation is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So you mentioned that a safe space can look like several things. For me, what comes to mind is art. I'm a theater artist, and I've always found a safe space in my theater community in creating art. And what's so exciting to me is there are so many artists on this panel. I know Atticus has his spoken word. Skye, you're also a theater artist. Junior Mintt, I would love to turn it over to you. You have been able to express yourself so confidently and passionately through performance. I personally have been loving starting my mornings every day with a minty fresh start with your minty mornings on Instagram. They're so inspirational. So I just want to know, how are you finding power and advocacy through your performances right now, despite pain, grief, and all of these other emotions that the Black community is experiencing?
So something that I personally always really truly find strength in myself with is the history of my people, because the history of Black people, Black trans people, whoever you are under that Black umbrella, it is the story of trying to find brightness and joy when there really isn't a reason to see it. Through enslavement, I think back to my family and I think back about how many people were enslaved, how many people went through torturous, horrible situations and still found a reason to have a child, raise that child, love that child, and put that child into the world. And it's something that I even very much connect with my mother as well, because my mother, one of the things that I really, really am thankful for with her, she was always honest about everything. It was never a lie. It was never mincing words. And so for me, hearing her journey about the things that she overcame and the reasons why she still found joy within me. So for me, I look around at this world and I see it as a beautiful opportunity to show people why there's a great chance to be a better person. This is a great chance to, if you notice the insensitivity you have towards people, grow into a person who tomorrow you're not as insensitive. Learn, grow. This is a great opportunity because I was not at all this proud, amazing Black trans woman that I am today. I had to learn the words and the vocabulary around my own identity and then as well others, because no one's born with a sensitivity or an understanding to someone else's walk of life. You have to be open to that. And that is what I've really learned, and I've learned to really grow within myself, is just the fact that I am so proud of the fact that I don't know everything, because that gives me an opportunity to learn. If I was perfect, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm a person who is on this earth who my community is there for me to grow with, to share with, to learn with. And there are so many beautiful people in your community who can give you a piece of yourself back if you choose to be open to that. Because there's no reason why you can't connect with a person other than prejudices that we have been taught and that have been ingrained within us. So it's really when you take a step back and you say to yourself, I'm another person in this grand scheme of things. Life is not personal against me. Life is not life is just happening. I'm just letting this thing happen and I'm just trying to find my best joy in it. And everyone has that. And if a Black trans woman who literally has come from poor upbringings, who has come from everything that is disenfranchising Black trans people in this world, if I can come from all of that and still find a reason to smile, if you're more privileged than me, what's your excuse? What is your excuse for not finding a beautiful bright spot in your life when I'm looking at my people being murdered, I'm looking at them face homelessness, I'm looking at people who look in the mirror and don't see a body that affirms them and then live in a house that doesn't affirm them. So if I can find a reason to find joy, to realize that my bright spot, my Black trans joy is Black trans joy for all of the trans umbrella, for all of the Black umbrella, because Marsha fought for us to have this freedom and to live every single day boldly as who you are is one, an act of defiance and an act of protest, but as well, it's what we have to do as a community, because that's the reason why people are there. People are there for us to learn and grow from. And so for me, whether it's through a computer screen or whether it's in person, community knows no bounds. So I've still been very much growing and learning and loving and connecting with people through this. It's just really changing the definition of what community is. Because if community for you is 4 people being in 4 walls, that's not really a community. That's just people gathering. Community can be through the webcam, it can be through a phone call, it can be through anything. And so I'd say as you move and navigate your day, you can find a lot of worth in it when you realize the opportunity and the limitless possibilities and truly connecting with the person and truly being yourself, whether it's FaceTime, whatever it may be.
That's so beautiful and so true. I'm just so happy to see you celebrating that joy, and I thank you for being a part of our community here. So thank
Honestly,
you.
and I thank you all. Thank you all for being in my community. I learn and grow from you all.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be learning and growing. I think so often ego can get in the way. I feel like a lot of the times I don't have the right answers and that frustrates me. So I think the more I lean into growing and learning, the better, the more I'm able to celebrate. So you're exactly right on. So I'd like to ask Rachel, so in this era of celebration, once a young person is able to celebrate who they truly are, once they're able to take that leap and embrace, how can their families, how can their loved ones and friends be better allies? How can they help to support them? What does that look like to you?
It's such a great question, and it is one that sort of speaks to what Alex and Junior have already talked about, and that's that idea of the importance of parental support, of an affirming environment, and a space where the youth, the child, can be sort of the leader in everything. I think oftentimes, I'm a parent myself, I think oftentimes as a parent, there's that sense of sort of wanting to guide your child and feeling sometimes like you know what's best for your child. That's not always the case. And I think as a child begins the process of coming out, of discovering who they are, as a parent, it's important to take that stance of curiosity. As a caregiver, it's important to step back and listen and be there without feeling like you have to have the answers, because you don't. All you need to do is just give your child space. Just be there, give them space, let them take you on the journey with them, and view it as a process. Your child doesn't have to have all the answers right as soon as they've made the decision to come out, and they won't. They won't necessarily know exactly what they want life to look like, and that's okay. It's about being in the moment and saying, how can I help you right now? How can I support you? What do you need from me? What do I need to learn? What can I do? We know from a research perspective that parental support and optimism for the future lead to significantly better outcomes for LGBT youth, for any youth, but specifically for LGBT youth. So if you're a parent or a caregiver and you're struggling right now and you're saying, how do I support my child? You just support, you just be there. You don't talk somebody out. You don't think you know what's best for them. You don't tell them it's a phase. You don't tell them that anything that, the heteronormality that you want to sort of impress upon them. You express that they're there, that you're willing to help them. You put yourself in spaces where you have opportunities to learn more about the community. You educate yourself, you surround yourself with opportunities to learn, just as Junior had talked about a moment ago, and you learn and you listen and you be there for them without putting any sort of qualifiers on the person you want them to be. You let them be the person that they are.
That's exactly right. That's wonderful advice for families and loved ones. Thank you so much, Rachel. But as we know, unfortunately, young people don't always have that same access to support. So I'd like to ask you, Skye, to lead us through a little bit of your journey. Where can a young person who doesn't have that familial support turn to? Walk us through a little bit of your journey and tell us what you think.
Okay, so I immigrated here in 2015. So in around April 2015 is when I immigrated here. And I, consciously enough, my father does live in Queens with my stepmother. And I still did not have that support. So again, there's this talk of oh, you can have family or you can have this kind of unification, which, is always an option. But for me, that was not the option. And that's the option that's not available to so many other young people that come out, so to speak. And I was already out. So, it was just a matter of that they did not have the capacity to help me. And that was fine. So eventually, after couch surfing and facing exploitation from other friends or people who I thought were friends, I had found Forney Center, which is in Harlem. And that's also where me and Alex met. and we're inseparable ever since then. But like basically like Forney was that center, when compared to the others that I was visiting at the time, was the only one that I had felt most comfortable with and most belonging to, because one, there was never a moment, there was not a culturally reflective staff that I was not speaking to at the time, meaning that staff who identified the way that I did and who was also Black. And that was super important to me because I did not want an intern from academia telling me about like, you know, my experiences. And I'm not to say that they wouldn't do a good job at it. It's just that that's not what a young person with my experience would have needed at that time. So it was super important that there were systems that were set up that way to kind of ensure that I was not going to recycle in the system, but I was actually going to be honorably discharged and get out and into permanent housing. This is what permanent housing looks like. I feel like a lot of the time when young people go into shelters, like there is this constant cycle of you constantly going back and forth in there and never really moving from one point to the next. So with Forney, there was progression. You know, first you would start with the emergency housing. And through that, you would have case management and all these different kind of like activities that you would do to kind of build you to get into the next housing. And then you'd move again. So it just kind of shows you like this hope. So you'd never stay at like one particular place, because with every program that you'd go into, you'd get all these different incentives and stuff that you were not able to acquire before. But what the important thing was during that time was I had all the support as regards to like my mental health. There were therapists that were available to me, like, and not based on their schedule, based on mine. And I made sure of it that way because it's my time that gets you paid. And I want you to understand that it's my trouble and it's my issues that gets you the job to sit there and do it. So I ensured that they were made available to me to navigate the system, because New York's homelessness system, had it not been for Forney Center, would not have been as graceful as my experience was. And it wasn't even that graceful. It's just that I was able to mentally navigate that system and be able to go through it, because it's super hard. You know what I mean? When you have curfews and you have jobs that conflict your curfew, or when you have like certain things that are going to happen in the shelter that you can't speak out against because it's going to affect your place there. I'm telling you, it's not like the easiest process trying to navigate it and go through it and smile and talk about it in this moment. But what I will say though is young people are the best advocates of your service. And if you're not speaking to young people, you definitely cannot know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. So what I had done when I went into Forney Center was ensure that they were always hearing me, that I was always speaking, that my evaluation was always given, that you were always going to know what I felt and how I think things should go. And it's people like Alex, which I'm so glad that Alex now serves in this position, because I felt like Alex was always that person, in addition to a few other folks, that would always be like, where's that young person that needs to be in the conversation? And then also, I want to take it a little bit further, because I think it's easy for us to tokenize young people, because I felt like there were so many moments that could have happened. But for me, it's just kind of like, I made sure that not only are you going to hear my voice, but I'm going to be incentivized. I'm going to be paid for my voice to be put into this conversation, because I could be doing something else. You know what I mean? And that's why I loved working with Alex at Forney Center, because I mean, like, I'm not going to lie, like, they're not the most perfect, because there's so many other issues that I could speak about, but I wouldn't be here today had it not been for them and their services and their programs. And that's all I really know, to be honest. As in regards to like the other places that I've been to, there were so many things that you were up against. At the time when I was in the shelter, you know, you're under 21. When you get to 21, you'd have aged out and you'd have to end up in an adult shelter. If we know about adult shelters, they don't have LGBTQ specific tailored services. So what would have meant was that when you turned 21 and did not get your shit together, excuse my language, by then you would have ended up in an adult shelter with everyone, meaning like everyone from all walks of life who don't have any kind of sensitization towards your particular experience. So I'm super glad that my advocacy was crucial in helping young people to be able to access Forney up until their 24th birthday. But then also it's just kind of like, It's every reason why we need to continue funding programs like this. It's every reason why we need to continue ensuring that whatever money that we defunded from the police goes into programs such as this, not specifically just Ali Forney Center, but more places for young people to go and have places that they can be and fully express themselves. Because, I mean, Ali Forney is doing great, but they can't help everyone. So what happens to all those other young people that they turn away? Where do they go? Especially in this crisis, especially in this time, COVID-19 isn't over. You know what I mean? And like, we're still struggling to get PPE gears. We're still struggling to get all these different stuff. Like, young people are not able to work. If we really want to talk about it, which I feel like the conversation needs to be had, is that we're in New York. We have Unity Works Project. We have summer youth internship programs, which are not happening. So those young people who would be looking for those jobs to get those programs, where are they going to go? That's where the conversation needs to happen, and that's where it needs to start. So anytime I get into these conversations, I'm just kind of like, where are your young people, and who are being accountable for those young people? You know, because it's always just kind of like, oh, they're in this program or they're in that program. Well, they're my young people because I'm Black like them. I've had their experiences like them. I identify as a gay Black man. So where are all the other gay Black men between the ages of 16 to 24 that need services are going, aside from Ali Forney Center? So that's always the question that's on my mind. But I would say that I would not change my experience being how it happened, because I would not have had the strength that I had now. I would have not have had the friends and the community and the chosen family, as you had mentioned. Like, chosen family is super important to me, because when I couldn't speak to my counselor, I spoke to my chosen family, and they always did right by me. And I feel like it's those relationships and those people that I met in that, you know, unfortunate time in my life that's making my life thrive right now. Like, because we're all leaders now. We're all leaders, and we're all leaders in our own right. And like, if it is that I cannot, like, you know, another important thing is that, you know, as a gay Black man, I can only speak for that experience. I cannot speak for a trans-identified experience. I cannot speak for other experiences. You know what I mean? And that's why it is that I needed other people in those shelters to be able to speak in the same capacity that I can, to speak for themselves and speak for their community, but speak as a collective and not speak over or speak for or assume. You know, so it was super important that when we all got out of that shelter, and best believe, it's like about 6 of us. We're all in our own apartments. We're all out of the shelter. And it's like, we're all leaders. And we all feed off of each other's like leadership, because we know that we can't lead alone. You know what I mean? And it's not just the gay community or the lesbian community or the bisexual community. I mean, if I could put T first, T would have been first, because they were the first ones. Trans-identified, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Fair, were the first folks for us to be able to even sit and have this conversation, as Mintt said. So like, I want you to understand that it's not just like it's all Black Lives Matters. It's not cisgendered Black hetero men that matter. It's all Black lives that matter. Like, we cannot ignore how many lives that we've lost within our community before this fight, after this fight. Like, all of our lives matter. And I'll end with that.
Thank you, Skye. That is so important. We are so grateful to you. We're so grateful to have your voice in this world, your light in this world. You are such a strong advocate, and it's very inspiring. And I'm so glad that you found the Ali Forney Center. It's such a great resource. And you're exactly right. We do need to be putting those youth voices forward. We at Born This Way Foundation, we are always including the voice of young people, because without their voices, these resources kind of, unless they're driving them, they don't matter. So on that note, I would love to go around and talk about what are the resources that you turn to, or that you might recommend to your friends tuning in to support their mental wellness to young people. And we'll start with Alex.
Sure, thank you, Josh. You know, there are a number of resources. It's not just the Ali Forney Center, but we do have a resource page, and I know Born This Way Foundation also has resources available for young people. Really, I think it's important for an LGBT young person who perhaps is not living in an affirming environment, perhaps is struggling with understanding their identity and also struggling with mental health, that they first and foremost seek mental health services and care. There are a number of providers across the country. There are a number of toolkits that are available online, offline, through apps as well. And if you're in a situation where you don't feel safe, you don't feel embraced, you don't feel seen or visible, I hate to be cliche, but it does get better. You will progress, you will move on in the world. And the first thing you should be looking at before anything is how to address how you're feeling, healing yourself from the inside out first, and everything else will fall into place. One of the top recommendations that I have in terms of resources or mental health is obviously certainly the Teen Mental Health First Aid Kit, and also a number of resources through the Trevor Project and through the National Institute of Mental Health that has a whole youth section that can help a young person.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So many great resources there. So I'll turn it back to you, Skye, for any other additional mental health resources that you might have.
I definitely will recommend Fierce NYC. I've been there for about like 3 years. And though they do not provide direct like drop-in services, as it regards to like training, like it's like they have like a lot of like affirming workshops and trainings that are tailored specific to the young people and our membership. So meaning like there's no workshop that's done or conducted or facilitated without a young person recommending it, and not the staff. So it's really like it's a member-led organization. And then I know that our programs are very flexible. So meaning like seasonally, if young people are wishing to have this kind of workshop or this kind of resource available to them in this time, then we facilitate that. And then we kind of like cycle it out to ensure that there's a next thing that's always reflective of what the young people need. And all that information is available at www.fiercenyc.org, or you can literally write me a message on Facebook. I'm that accessible. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Skye. Rachel.
Yeah, just to underscore the importance of mental health care, I think if you have the ability and you could seek out a mental health professional to talk to, I'm obviously biased, but I think it's always helpful to have somebody objective, to have somebody affirming, to have somebody in your space. I will underscore the importance of being a consumer of mental health services. So not all mental health professionals are created equal. Find somebody that's affirming, find somebody that has an expertise in working with LGBTQ individuals. You need somebody who's going to know how to help you through your process. But I think that's a great step. And if you don't have the financial ability to seek services, there's a number of pro bono services out there. There's a number of free support spaces where it's maybe more peer-based. But any space you have to be able to talk and express what you're going through and find support and connection, whether it's professional or whether it's more about peer support, is going to be really helpful. So take advantage of that, seek that out, and get the support that you need.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. Atticus, what resources might you have for us?
So I've obviously biased to Youth First, and though COVID has been awful, something beautiful that has come out of it is Youth First has turned all of our programs virtual for the time being, and through that, people who otherwise could not join have been able to join. So if you even if you don't live in North Texas, if you want to join our programs for however long quarantine lasts, our Instagram is Youth First BYRC, and there's also the Resource Center website that works. I also like QChat. It's an online chat website that you can find any sort of community and really just find connection with people. Also in North Texas is the Genesis program, which is a program that specifically helps trans youth go through the transition process, and it's an amazing program. And yeah, just really finding your community, whether that be on Instagram or any social media is really, really important. So yeah.
Thank you, Atticus. You're so right. It's so important, especially right now when so many of us are quarantined in different kinds of situations, that we're still able to find that community. So those are really awesome resources. And Junior Mintt.
Well, for me, my favorite one is always the Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. I fully recommend it. Amazing piece of wisdom of just very easily digestible bits of therapy that you can take and process throughout your day. And every time I see them on my timeline, it's also a reminder for me to check in with my own mental health. It's like, well, have I asked myself how I'm doing today? And then as well, 3 organizations come to mind. One is the Oprah Project. The next three I'm going to list are all Black trans-led and organized organizations for Black trans people. So because intersectional identity, there's a lot of different things that compound as to why we can't get mental health resources. And so a lot of these organizations not only tackle helping to fund your mental health research or whatever your journey may be, but as well helping to tackle the cost of homelessness, the cost of maybe a transition surgery, whatever it may be. And so it helps to tackle other different things that compound upon why you can't get mental health as a Black trans individual. So the first one is For the Girls. It is for the GWORLS. It is a Black trans organization that funds any medical need for a Black trans person who needs it. You submit, and then there's a huge fundraiser, and every single one that I've seen for the past 3 months has met its goal, and as well the person has like been amazingly happy with the fact that they haven't had to pay for it. As well, on top of it, the Okra Project. The Okra Project is an absolutely amazing organization. They help to basically honestly fund meals, transportation, hospital costs, whatever it may be for a Black trans individual. As well, on top of it, the final one is Glitz Inc. It's GLITS Inc. Kaya and Dorisho created it. They just raised over $1 million from fundraising in order to secure an actual physical location for housing for Black trans individuals. And so that is one project they're tackling, but they also tackle so many different things that are affecting the Black trans community. So I fully recommend you follow, enrich, fundraise, but as well, just make sure you just keep your mental health journey going, whatever it may be, whatever that looks like for you, whatever. If it's Googling apps, whether it is calling healthcare professionals, whatever it may be, just don't let your healthcare journey and your mental health care journey stop today or any day. Just let it keep going, because your brain is still processing things, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not.
That's right. Thank you so much. Those are such great resources, and thank you for lifting up and amplifying those organizations. That's really cool. So as I mentioned at the start, we are here and we can celebrate Pride because of our Black and Brown trans and queer elders. So before we close out and take a couple of questions from our audience, I would just love to pass the mic to Skye and then to Junior and ask, what is giving you hope right now? And what can we do as an LGBTQ plus community to amplify and to center the needs of our Black and Brown siblings?
That's a really, really great question. And I think personally for me, in addition to mental wellness, is like self-care and understanding what truly makes you happy. What makes me happy is the fact that I'm able to redesign this apartment because it's mine. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that makes me happy. And I spent so much time on it, and you can't see it anywhere else because it's mine. I would also say, like, reading and like, talking to friends, because I think this idea of, together apart is never something that I resonated with. So that just the ability to be able to speak to my friends and speak to my best friend and spend time with her and with other friends is just like, it's super important to me. I have a dog. She's like 9 months, and she has been one of the most supportive things in my life, the biggest commitment in my life, like, and it's just kind of like, I felt like had I not had this quarantine, I wouldn't have had the moment that she deserves, or the time that she deserves to have me take care of her. So that's been super great. But what I will say that is super important in this time is to kind of remember the people who were always there supporting young people, because I think now I've seen it more than ever, where people who weren't about this cause just kind of like, using, Black people in their names and exploiting us, and just kind of like, we're about Black Lives Matter and we care for Black Lives Matter. But I'm just kind of like, well, I wasn't waiting for George Floyd to be killed for that to happen. We were doing it before. We were always doing it. And you need to support folks who were always doing it. And I feel like with that being said, it's just kind of understanding like the organizations that had already laid the grassroots foundation and created the work for that to happen. So I am talking about Forney Center. I am talking about Fierce. I am talking about other organizations that were always helping young people of color. and ensure that you're supporting them and that your money and your votes and your attention and your spirit is going towards their positive development, because they are the ones that can really tell you what young people are going through or give the face to young people. Like, you know, because I just think it's super important, because I've heard so many things over the last couple of days of folks saying like, oh, we want to, you know, work with this person, or we want to work with that person. And I'm just like, that's super great. But I want you to understand the folks that are out there every day helping young people like us, you know, who are in the streets, who are having this conversation, who are part of this conversation. Like, these are the people you need to be supporting and amplifying their voices, because it's our networks of folks that are gonna, you know, keep us pushing us further. But I do feel like, you know, we need to keep having these hard conversations. We need to keep doing these live conversations, because I think, you know, they did this shit to shut us up. Like, you know, they just did not realize that we are gonna connect. We're always gonna find a way to connect, and I feel like we should keep talking. And that's what I will leave with you.
Something that has been bringing me a lot of joy has been getting to see people be uncomfortable, mainly because it is something that, as a Black trans person, I've learned that nothing pushes a privileged person to change like uncomfortability. And it makes me so happy because, for me, I repeat to myself all the time that Black people did not stop dying after Trayvon Martin. Black people did not stop dying after Eric Garner. And so for me, I'm happy to see that people are realizing that this isn't a moment and it's a movement, that it's a daily exercise to change the way that you live your life. Because if you're not enfranchising and putting power to Black trans people, then you're only detracting from what we have. Because if you're not talking to the most intersectional and the most disenfranchised in our community, you're just allowing them to slip through the cracks again. It's like, it's great to plan a march, but is everyone accessible there? Is there a way for disabled people to get there? Is there an ASL interpreter? It's making sure that every member of this community is not left out, because that is what has happened every time. Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, Miss Major, all of them amazing brown trans people, far right, and then in the 70s, the entire queer movement disowned them. And so it's moments like that where we need to be listening and empowering the most disenfranchised. I want to see Black trans sex workers speaking at every protest, because the whole Section 7 of workplace discrimination, fantastic, amazing achievement, but who is defining what work is? We need to decriminalize what sex work is so we can actually protect sex workers as well, because that is what most Black trans people's employment is. So it's taking the time to actually sit down and think about your community. If you think that your job is done as an ally, you're not an ally, because I need to see you tangibly. I need to see activism politically, economically, and culturally. I need to see you enfranchising people. I want to see Black trans people on your timeline. I want to see them on your story. I want to see you celebrating us when our names are being celebrated because we've been murdered, but also because we've done an achievement. Because just to celebrate us when we're dying does nothing for us. And so it's truly changing the way that you live your life every single day, because we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of systemic oppression to undo. And it's not until you realize that if you're putting money into the pockets of Chick-fil-A or any non-Black owned, queer owned, trans owned business, you're taking money away from us, because that's just how capitalism works. That's just the system we live in. And so I would really just leave it with everybody to understand that every single day is an opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life. You could be the reason that a Black trans person can have an Uber ride home. Because I know that I had to walk through my neighborhoods because I couldn't afford an Uber in full drag as a Black trans person. And did I feel very uncomfortable? Absolutely. Did I fear for my life? Absolutely. But did I have the money to get a car? Absolutely not. And so it's the simple thing is, well, you can mobile order your Starbucks, or you can take care of someone's car. I have a friend who literally Venmos me once a week just so I can treat myself to a meal. Like, it's actually taking the time out to check how your community is doing. Because if you think that just affecting one person's life cannot change the world, then you don't believe in changing the world, because that's how it starts. It just starts on a one daily basis with one person. Check up on a Black trans person and say, how can I support you today? How can I support you? Don't ask what you can do, just what do you need? What do you need from me? And that's what I would leave you with.
I think that is a perfect way to leave us. Junior, thank you so much for those incredibly inspiring words and those calls to action. We need to lean into that uncomfortability, those of us who are privileged, so we can keep fighting. And all it takes is one person. You are so right. So thank you all so much. On that note, I will close us out today. I have so enjoyed speaking with all of you. I've so enjoyed learning from each and every one of you. Like I said earlier, you each bring such an awesome perspective to this conversation around mental health, this very important conversation in mental health around LGBTQ plus youth. So I thank you for your time. And thank you all for tuning in. You can find out more about all of our panelists and Born This Way Foundation on our social media channels at BTWF Foundation or at bornthisway.foundation. Thank you all so much.